My eyes slowly opened, the bright white light of the hospital room making me blink several times. The first thing I saw was my mother's face, bathed in tears but with a radiant smile. She held my hand and murmured thanks for me being alive and awake. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and my voice was nothing more than a hoarse whisper. With great effort, I managed to ask for water. My mother quickly grabbed a cup with a straw and helped me take a few sips. The cold water soothed my throat, and I was finally able to ask where I was and what had happened. My mother explained that I was in the hospital and had suffered a serious car accident after a party. I tried to remember the party, the accident, but my mind was blank. The last memories I had were of getting ready to go out that night, full of plans and dreams for the future. Gradually, I began to notice a strange sensation, or rather, a lack of sensation. I tried to move in bed, but my body didn't respond. My arms and legs felt like dead weights, and I couldn't feel anything below my neck. A growing fear began to form in my chest. My mother noticed my agitation and called the nurse. They talked in low voices, casting worried glances in my direction. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand what was happening to me. Why couldn't I move? The doctors entered the room, their faces serious and compassionate. They asked to speak with me and my mother in private. My heart raced, a dark foreboding taking hold of me. Dr. Jones, the neurosurgeon, began to explain my condition. He said that I had suffered a severe cervical spinal cord injury during the accident, resulting in loss of movement and sensation below the neck. They had done everything possible to preserve my movements during the emergency surgery, but unfortunately, it was not possible. His words echoed in my mind, each one weighing like a ton. Tetraplegia, paralysis, loss of movement. I felt like I was in a nightmare, desperately waiting to wake up. My mother held my hand, silent tears streaming down her face. She tried to comfort me, but I could see the fear and pain in her eyes. Dr. Jones continued, saying that in a few weeks after my initial recovery, they could perform a new surgery. If all went well, there was a chance I could regain some movement in my arms. But he was clear in saying that there were no guarantees and that the rehabilitation process would be long and challenging. I listened to all of this, but it was as if the words didn't make sense. My mind was in turmoil, trying to process the idea that I might never walk again, never hug someone again, never be independent again. Despair and fear took hold of me. I wanted to scream, cry, beg for someone to tell me it was all a mistake, but I knew, deep down, that it was real. My body, once full of life and movement, was now motionless and numb. I looked at my mother, seeking comfort and answers, but all I saw was a reflection of my own fear. How was I going to face this? How could I live in a body that didn't obey me? Tears began to fall uncontrollably, my sobs echoing through the hospital room. I was terrified, lost, and desperate. My life had changed in an instant, and I had no idea how to move forward. As the doctors left the room, leaving me with my mother and my dark thoughts, all I wanted was to wake up from that nightmare and have my life back. The days dragged on in the hospital, each minute feeling like an eternity. I oscillated between moments of numbness and explosions of intense emotions. The reality of my condition hit me in waves, each one more overwhelming than the last. Anger boiled inside me. Anger at the drunk driver who caused the accident. Anger at the fate that put me in this situation. Anger at my own body for betraying me in this way. I wanted to scream, punch something, unleash all the frustration that consumed me. But I could barely move my arms, which only fueled my anger even more. In the darkest moments, despair took over. I wondered how I would face the future, how I could live a fulfilling life trapped in a body that didn't obey me. I cried until I had no more tears, my chest tight with anguish and fear of the unknown. My mother was always by my side, trying to comfort and encourage me. She told me about the surgery that could restore some movement to my arms, about the possibilities of rehabilitation, and about how I was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. But at that moment, her words sounded hollow to me. I couldn't see beyond the pain and darkness that enveloped me. There were moments when a deep and overwhelming sadness dominated me. I thought about all the plans I had for the future, all the dreams that now seemed unattainable. I felt lost, directionless, as if my life had lost all meaning. The idea of depending on others for the most basic tasks filled me with shame and despair. I knew I needed to find a way to deal with all those emotions, to find a purpose and a reason to move forward. But at that moment, I was far from being at peace with my condition. Every day was a battle, a constant struggle against my own inner demons. The doctors and therapists tried to guide me, to show me that there was life beyond spinal cord injury. They talked about people who had overcome similar challenges and found ways to live a full and meaningful life. But I wasn't ready to listen, to accept. I was trapped in my own whirlwind of emotions, unable to see a way out. I knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, that I would have to face not only physical challenges, but also emotional and psychological ones. And, at that moment, I wasn't sure if I had the necessary strength to do it. All I could do was survive one day at a time, hoping that at some point I would find the peace and acceptance I so desperately needed. In the weeks that followed, I found myself trapped in an endless cycle of despair and sadness. My days were punctuated by painful physical therapy sessions and nights filled with vivid dreams of the life I feared I had lost forever. In my dreams, I saw myself strutting down the runway, the flash of photographers illuminating my smiling face. I felt the adrenaline rush through my veins as the audience applauded, admiring my beauty and confidence. But then I would wake up to the harsh reality of the hospital, my body motionless and dependent. Each missed photo shoot, each canceled commitment was like a stab to my heart. I wondered if I would ever be able to resume my career, to feel the thrill of being in front of the cameras again. The uncertainty consumed me, fueling my anguish and despair. In a rare moment of clarity, I asked about my brother, Lucas, who was driving the car at the time of the accident. My mother, with tired and worried eyes, explained that he had suffered only minor injuries, scratches on his face, arms, and legs. No broken bones. But the next news hit me like a punch to the gut. Lucas was sinking into a deep depression, consumed by guilt over the accident that had left me tetraplegic. He could barely get out of bed, the weight of responsibility crushing him. I felt a mix of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to comfort my brother, to tell him that I didn't blame him for what happened. But another part, the one consumed by anger and bitterness, wanted to scream at him, to blame him for everything I was going through. The days dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I needed help with everything, from the most basic needs, like going to the bathroom and eating, to simple things like drinking water or scratching an itch. I felt humiliated, exposed, as if I had lost all my dignity. My mother and the nursing staff tried to cheer me up, reminding me of the surgery that could restore some movement to my arms. But I struggled to hold on to that hope. The fear of failure, of being trapped in that state forever, haunted me constantly. So, in a spiral of suffering and disbelief, I dragged myself through the next 3 weeks. Each day was a battle, a struggle to find purpose, a reason to continue. I oscillated between moments of deep despair and flashes of determination, knowing that I needed to be strong to face what was to come. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. I was prepped and taken to the operating room, fear and hope vying for space in my heart. I knew that this surgery could change my life, for better or for worse. All I could do was trust the doctors and pray that everything would go well. As the anesthesia took effect and I slipped into unconsciousness, one last thought crossed my mind. I would fight no matter what happened. I would find a way to rebuild my life, even if I had to do it in a completely different way than I had imagined. I slowly opened my eyes, the light of the hospital room momentarily blinding me. My mind was hazy, still under the effect of the anesthesia. Gradually, memories of the surgery began to return, and a mix of anxiety and hope took hold of me. I tried to move my arms, and to my surprise and relief, they responded. It wasn't a complete movement, but it was more than I could do before. Tears of happiness streamed down my face. Finally, some good news after so many weeks of darkness. The doctors entered the room, cautious smiles on their faces. They explained to me that the surgery had been a success, and that with a lot of physical therapy and determination, I could regain a good part of the movement in my arms. It was a small miracle, a chance to start over. But happiness soon gave way to a harsh reality. My legs remained motionless, not responding to my commands. The doctors were clear. The injury to my spine was severe and irreversible. I would never walk again. That news hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew rationally that it was a possibility, but hearing the confirmation out loud made it all too real. A deep grief settled in my heart, a sense of loss so great that it seemed to crush me. I was happy about my arms, of course. But how could I accept a life without walking? Without strutting down the runway? Without dancing, running, feeling the beach sand under my feet? It was a frightening prospect, a future I hadn't planned for. The following days were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I started physical therapy, working hard to strengthen my arms and regain my independence. Each small achievement was celebrated, each recovered movement was a victory. But the journey was long and arduous. There were days when the pain was unbearable, when frustration and exhaustion overwhelmed me. I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I would ever be able to accept this new reality. The hospital psychologist became an important ally in this battle. She helped me process my feelings, deal with the loss, and find the strength to move forward. Gradually, I began to understand that my life hadn't ended. It had just changed course. I still had my dreams, my talents, my passion for fashion. I knew that this wouldn't pass, that my love for the runway had been with me since I was a little girl, and I would need to do something about it. But I was determined not to let the wheelchair define me. The road ahead was uncertain and frightening, but I knew I wasn't alone. I had my family, my friends, and a dedicated medical team by my side. With a determined sigh, I prepared myself to face whatever came next, partly because giving in to defeat was never an option, and partly because I believed in myself. I was Julia. I had left a small town in the countryside and made it to the runways of Milan. I wasn't a quitter, even though I wanted to give up most of the time. After weeks of intense physical therapy at the hospital, I was finally discharged. It was time to face the real world, to adapt to my new life outside the safe walls of the hospital. I was anxious and terrified at the same time. My mother had prepared everything to welcome me home. Ramps were installed, furniture was rearranged to accommodate my wheelchair. It was strange to see my own house from such a different perspective, as if I were a stranger visiting a familiar place. The first days were the hardest. Simple tasks like taking a shower or getting dressed became real challenges. My arms were still weak, and I was constantly frustrated by my limitations. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the reality of my condition seemed too overwhelming to bear. But I wasn't alone. My family was always by my side, supporting and encouraging me. My brother Lucas especially became my greatest ally. He was determined to help me overcome every obstacle, to make me laugh in the darkest moments. Together, we began to explore new possibilities. Lucas took me for walks in the park, where I could feel the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. He helped me find creative ways to do things, adapting objects and activities to my needs. Gradually, I began to feel more confident, more in control of my life. I continued with physical therapy, working hard to strengthen my arms and gain more independence. Each small victory was celebrated as the great triumph it was. But there was still a big challenge to be faced: returning to the world of fashion. I knew I could no longer be a traditional model, walking the runways. But my love for fashion still burned in my heart, and I was determined to find my place, because staying out, being a mere spectator of my dreams, was not an option. With the help of my psychologist, I began to explore new possibilities. I could become a wheelchair model, representing the beauty and diversity of disability. I could use my experience to inspire others, to show that fashion is for everyone, regardless of physical limitations. It was a frightening path, full of uncertainties. But for the first time since the accident, I felt a spark of hope, a renewed purpose. I would transform my tragedy into something meaningful, use my voice to make a difference. Of course, there were days when fear and doubt overwhelmed me. Days when I wondered if I would be able to face the curious stares, the insensitive comments. But in those moments, I remembered everything I had already overcome, all the strength I had discovered within myself. I was Julia, the girl who had survived a terrible accident, who had fought against all odds. I was more than my limitations, more than my wheelchair. I was a survivor. I began to prepare myself to move forward with my journey. This was an unprecedented path, with no precedent, and I would need to be the first to open it. There was no recipe, no one ahead of me to tell me how to do it. If I needed to open the path while walking it, so be it. It was time to shine again, in a totally new way that I didn't yet know. This gave me strength, made me continue with the physical therapy and psychologist sessions, because I had a place where I wanted to arrive, and this made me move forward even on the worst days, and they were the majority of my days for at least a whole year. Lucas entered my room with an enigmatic smile on his face. "I have a surprise for you," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. I followed him, curious, as he guided me to the car. After a few minutes of driving, we arrived at a small studio on a quiet street. "Pottery School," read the sign on the door. I looked at Lucas, confused, but he just smiled and encouraged me to go inside. The interior of the studio was cozy and inviting, with shelves full of ceramic pieces in various stages of creation. A middle-aged woman greeted us warmly, introducing herself as Professor Anna.
"Your brother told me about you, Julia. He thought you might enjoy trying pottery as a form of therapy and creative expression."
I looked at Lucas, surprised and touched by his consideration. He always seemed to know exactly what I needed, even when I didn't know myself. Professor Anna led me to a work table and introduced me to the basic materials: the clay, the tools, the wheel. With patience and skill, she guided me through the first steps, showing me how to shape the clay and give form to my ideas. The moment my hands touched the soft, malleable clay, something awakened inside me. It was as if a dormant energy had suddenly been released, flowing from my fingers into the clay and back to me. I lost myself in the process, shaping and sculpting, feeling the clay respond to my touch. My arms, once weak and hesitant, seemed to gain strength and precision with each movement. It was as if pottery had awakened a part of me that I didn't even know existed. Hours passed without me realizing it, and when I finally stepped away from the wheel, I had before me a small, crooked bowl, but made with my own hands. I held it against my chest, amazed and moved. "This is amazing, Julia," Lucas exclaimed, looking at my creation with pride. "You have a natural talent for this." I smiled, feeling a wave of joy and fulfillment wash over me. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly alive, connected to a part of me that had been dormant for a long time. In the weeks that followed, pottery began to occupy more and more space in my mind. I spent hours in the studio, learning new techniques and experimenting with different shapes and textures. My hands, once dedicated to showing the beauty of clothes, now created beauty from clay. It was an incredible feeling, as if I had found a new language to express myself. Through pottery, I could channel my emotions, my fears, my hopes. Not only through the creation of the pieces, but through the very act of working with the clay, which seemed to have something magical about it. It was as if the clay, with its moisture and malleability, its ability to become anything, absorbed my fears, my grief, my nonconformity. Each piece I created was a piece of me, a story told through curves and lines, a lot of bad feelings that turned into a beautiful object. And the most amazing thing of all was that pottery seemed to have awakened a new sensitivity in my hands. They seemed more alive, more skilled than ever. It was as if the accident had somehow taken away the movement of my legs and amplified my ability to feel with my hands by 1,000, and my body was just waiting for something to make this potential come true. Looking at my clay-covered hands, I smiled. They were no longer just the hands of a model, beautiful and delicate. They were the hands of an artist, capable of creating beauty from chaos. Almost without realizing it, I was being taken over by this new passion, eager to see where it would take me next. As I gained experience and accumulated a small but efficient repertoire of techniques and creations, I also fell in love with my own ability. I had never been particularly good at anything before. I didn't know I had a gift. And this was unanimous. Every teacher, every student more experienced than me was impressed with how quickly I evolved, and this surprised me with how much I could not know about myself, with how much there was still to be discovered, worked on, built. My hands, now more alive than ever, were shaping a future full of infinite possibilities that I never imagined possible. In the pottery classes, I not only discovered a new passion, but also met someone special. His name was Marcus, and he was one of the most talented students in the class. Marcus had skillful hands and a gentle gaze. He approached me with a warm smile, offering to help me when I had difficulties with a particular technique. His patience and generosity captivated me from the start. We began to talk during breaks, sharing our stories and dreams. Marcus was a rising artist with his own studio where he created incredible pieces. He told me about his journey, about how pottery had transformed his life and given him purpose. I opened up to him, sharing my own story, the accident, the long pause in my modeling career, the discovery of pottery as a new passion. Marcus listened to me with attention and empathy, offering words of encouragement and support. Over time, our friendship deepened and evolved into something more. The glances lingered, the smiles became more intimate. There was an undeniable connection between us, a harmony that went beyond words. One day after class, Marcus invited me to visit his studio. I accepted, excited at the prospect of seeing his work and spending more time with him. When I arrived there, I was amazed by the beauty and creativity of his pieces. Marcus showed me around, explaining his creative process and the techniques he used. I felt inspired and motivated, seeing the passion and dedication he put into his work. Then, in a moment of silence, Marcus approached me. His eyes met mine, full of tenderness and affection. He held my hands in his, tracing the lines of my fingers with reverence. He whispered,
"Julia, your strength, your resilience, your passion, everything about you enchants me.
He paused and kissed me. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I was also in love with Marcus, with his kindness, his creativity, his ability to make me feel alive and valued. We spent long minutes in that soft and passionate kiss, sealing the promise of a future together. And so, amidst the clay and the heat of the kiln, our love blossomed, transforming our lives in ways we had never imagined. I had found not only a new purpose, but also a new love. A love that strengthened me, uplifted me, and made me believe that anything was possible. Love had found us unexpectedly, and we were ready to embrace it with all our hearts. With the support of Marcus and my new passion for pottery, I felt encouraged to reclaim my place in the fashion world, but in a different way. I wanted to use my experience and my voice to make a difference, to pave the way for other people with disabilities. I began to connect with other models and fashion professionals who faced challenges similar to mine. Together, we formed a collective dedicated to promoting inclusion and representation in the fashion industry. Our collective, called Beauty Without Limits, worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the importance of diversity and accessibility in fashion. We organized events, workshops, and social media campaigns, highlighting the talent and beauty of people with disabilities. Gradually, our message began to gain traction. Brands and designers started reaching out to us, interested in collaborating and including models with disabilities in their campaigns and fashion shows. I had the opportunity to return to photography, this time not only as a model, but also as an advocate for inclusion. I participated in several campaigns that celebrated diversity and challenged traditional beauty standards. Each photo shoot was an affirmation that I still had much to offer, that my disability did not define me. I felt empowered, confident, and grateful to be able to use my platform to inspire and encourage others. As my fashion career resurged, my passion for pottery also flourished. My work began to gain recognition, and I was invited to my first solo exhibition in a renowned open-air gallery, a place so beautiful that it seemed made up. I prepared myself with dedication, creating a collection of pieces that reflected my personal journey, overcoming, resilience, discovering a new passion. Each piece was a part of me, a story told through clay. On the opening day of the exhibition, I was amazed by the public's response. People from all walks of life connected with my pieces, finding in them a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. And then, something extraordinary happened. An art collector, impressed with my work, decided to acquire one of my pieces for a significant amount, in the thousands. I was stunned and moved. That sale represented more than just a monetary value. It was a validation of my talent, my passion, and my journey. It was a representation of the autonomy that was not only not over, as I had so often feared, but on the contrary, it was materializing even financially. I didn't know it yet, but sales like that would be frequent, and I was beginning to walk the path of a very comfortable life thanks to the public recognition that gave me not only visibility, but also a good financial return. Something I never imagined possible when I first got involved with pottery. At that moment, I realized how much I had grown and evolved since the accident. I had found new ways to express myself, to make a difference in the world. My disability was no longer a limitation, but an integral part of who I was. An artist, an activist, a woman determined to leave her mark. I knew there were still many challenges ahead, many barriers to be broken down. But at that moment, surrounded by my art, by Marcus' love, and by the support of the community, I felt invincible. I decided to share this story because I just received an email that changed everything. My heart raced as I clicked to open the message that had the words, "Invitation for exhibition and lectures in Japan," in the subject field. The email was from a renowned art gallery in Tokyo, known for its commitment to contemporary art and the promotion of emerging artists from around the world. They had become aware of my work and were impressed with my unique approach and personal story. The invitation was for me to participate in a special exhibition, presenting my ceramic pieces and sharing my journey as an artist and activist. I was stunned and moved by the opportunity. Exhibiting my art and sharing my story in a country as distant and culturally rich as Japan was a dream I had never dared to imagine. Immediately, I ran to tell Marcus the news. He hugged me tightly, overflowing with pride and joy.
You deserve this, Julia. Your talent and passion are conquering the world.
In the days that followed, I immersed myself in preparations for the trip. I carefully selected the pieces I would take to the exhibition, each one carrying a piece of my soul and my story. I also began working on the content of my lectures, reflecting on my journey from the accident to becoming a recognized artist and activist. It was a lecture I had already given a few times, one of them even reaching thousands of views online, but now it would be for a really large and foreign audience who might not understand some expressions from the original version. So I worked hard to keep intact what really mattered in the presentation. I wanted to inspire other people, to show that disability is not an insurmountable obstacle, and that we all have the power to transform our lives and the world around us. When the day of departure finally arrived, I was filled with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. Marcus accompanied me to the airport, holding my hand firmly and reminding me how much he believed in me. However, at the moment of farewell, he kept walking by my side. He pulled out a ticket in a small box from his pocket, knelt down and said,
If you let me, I will go with you wherever you go. Julia, will you marry me?
The people around us looked at us with silly, loose smiles. And when I said yes, of course, with my eyes already overflowing, there were shouts, whistles, and applause from all sides. He whispered, kissing me softly.
And I want to watch from the front row as your rise and your strength illuminate the world.
I felt an inexplicable wave of gratitude wash over me. I had become living proof of something that, until then, perhaps I didn't even believe in. That love and respect for a craft, combined with dedication and hard work, can elevate what you do to such an extent that it can change someone's life. As if that weren't enough, in the seat next to mine was the love of my life, my biggest supporter and admirer. And we were going, engaged, to my first international experience as an artist. I was about to embark on a journey I never thought possible. From the accident that almost ended my career to becoming an internationally recognized artist and activist, my life had taken extraordinary turns.
Hey there, Unraveling Ties family. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. I hope it touched your heart, made you think, or even inspired you in some way. We would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about this story. Don't be shy. Leave a comment below and share your perspective with our community. Your voice matters to us. If you enjoyed today's story and want to be a part of our journey as we unravel the complexities of human relationships, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss a new story. We're always eager to explore new angles and dive into the themes that resonate with you the most. So tell us, what kind of stories would you like to see in upcoming episodes? Your input helps us create content that you'll love. And hey, if today's story reminded you of a personal experience or a tale you'd like to share, we're all ears. Feel free to share your own stories in the comments. Who knows, your story might even inspire a future Unraveling Ties episode. Once again, thank you for being a part of the Unraveling Ties family. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Until next time, keep embracing the ties that bind us and never stop exploring the depths of the human heart. See you in the next video.